But that's the
Right.
thing is you have people who are like, it's not affordable. Okay. So real quick, and this is going to sound made up to the people listening. There is a law that if you own a rent stabilized apartment, right, in New York, which
Mhm.
basically, and just I'll try and make this quick. Rent stabilization is voted on by the city every year. Some years they say you can't raise the rent. Other years they say 3%. The max I think has been 3%. So
Right.
you have, and I'll give you a personal example. This is going to sound made up. People say, how is that possible? I have a building in the West Village, market rate one bed, 5,500, right? A
Hmm.
rent stabilized tenant who's been there since the 70s, who started at $400, is only at like $900 at this point, right?
Right.
They
It's
deserve it.
crazy.
They've been there since the 70s. Their
Yeah.
rent is stabilized. They have a rent stabilized lease. They passed a law in 2019 that said when he moves out, the next person also has to pay $900.
Hmm. Really?
Swear to God. So right now in New York City, there are 80,000 minimum apartments sitting empty being warehoused. So they passed this law
Okay. So wait, so they're trying to pass on the rent stabilization to the next person?
to the, yeah, they're like, okay, this person, let's say this person who's been there since the 70s dies. The next person who moves in has to be rent stabilized.
I'm wondering why would they do that?
So it's called the Rent Stabilization Act of 2019. I think they were trying to stick it to the landlords, right?
Yeah.
But, it's never that simple. And what the landlords did, the bigger ones, right? The bigger ones. If you own two multifamilies in Brooklyn, you and the rent was getting was $600. That doesn't cover the taxes, right? Like the costs are
Right.
going up, heat, hot water. So
Yeah.
those people either have to sell the building, right, which is
Right.
unfortunate, or take a loss. The bigger landlords, they let it sit empty and they warehouse it. They write it off at the end of the year. Depreciating asset. They don't care. They write it
Yeah.
off against their gains.
Right.
So they're like, oh, okay, I can only charge $900. Like,
I just
middle
don't rent
finger. I just will let it sit empty. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what does that do? That increases the value of all the free market apartments because there's less of them.
Right.
And so
Huh.
I know personally, I know of a bunch of apartments, but yeah, they say the number is 80. I think it's close to 100,000 apartments sitting empty in New York
Wow.
City.
That's
Because
crazy. That
why would
just
you, when someone's been in there since the 70s, the 80s, or even the 90s, and they die or they leave, why would you repair that apartment? You got to rent it. You got new appliances, right? I've been in, like I was in an apartment. This lady passed away. I mean, these people are holding on to these apartments. You go in there, it's like it hasn't been touched since the 70s.
wow.
It's like yeah, I don't want to get into it, but so you have people in a building. Some people are paying $800 for one bedroom. Market rate is 5,500. It's crazy, right?
Sure.
Now, I am not Warren Buffett, but if you increase the supply of apartments to meet the demand, prices will come down.
Prices will come down. Right.
But instead of
Right.
that, he's like, no, it's the brokers.
Yeah, and here's the thing. So like you said, so when it comes to the broker fee in and of itself, I mean, you're either paying the broker fee or you're paying slightly higher rent. And over 1 year, it's gonna total the broker fee anyway. And if you're living there longer, you're gonna be paying more anyway.
More
So, you
because
know,
when you talk about these socialists though, right? He's a socialist, right? Okay, so real quick math. If it's we'll go back to the baseline number of 3,000. Three
yeah,
thousand and a 1 month fee,
yeah,
or let's say 33.95 no fee. Right? Let's just say
mhm,
33.95 no fee. Okay, you didn't pay a fee. Your upfront cost for less. You go to renew and the landlord says, "Okay, I want 34.95." Right? Which
right,
is not a crazy increase, right? Or let's say
yeah,
34.50. I don't get paid on that second year. So now
exactly,
apartment that you were going to be paying 3,100 in year two, you're now paying 34.50, right? That goes to the landlord. I thought we were trying to narrow the wealth gap, not widen it, right?
right,
Okay. Doesn't
and that
stop there. It goes to the landlord. Now imagine a landlord has 100 apartments and he's getting $400 more on every apartment per month.
five
Okay. He
thousand, five
goes,
thousand a year,
he goes to,
almost,
he goes to the bank and says, "Hey, look at my rent roll. Look at how much I'm getting.
right,
Can I borrow more money?" He borrows
yep,
more money. He buys another building. He continues to widen the wealth gap. I'm just right. And okay, great. Good for him. But that is what these laws are basically doing, right? It's like
yeah,
this guy's trying to put a Nelly sized band aid on something that needs like open heart surgery. You know what I
yeah.
mean? It's not going to
Well, well,
happen.
let's well let's take a step back. So I'm going to
Sure.
have to assume. I always like to take a look at what's happening and try to deduce what I think is
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
So I think, like you said, it's really a an idea of, okay, I'm going to stick it to the landlords. The landlords are overcharging. Now the cost of living in New York is high. It always is, or it always has been, at least the last at least 20-25 years, and it's going to be that way anyway. It's just the way it is in New York. So New York is just a different animal now in regards to just saying, okay, we're going to do something to protect the renter. It really doesn't protect them. And in addition to that, going back to the original point, there's this whole thing about, okay, well, if you want to, because the lady was saying in the story, and I've seen this on multiple channels. Well,
Of
if the
course.
landlord wants to hire a broker, whoever hires the broker should pay the broker. And
Sure.
so I want to parallel that to on the buy and sell side.
Sell
So in
side. Sure.
Jersey, and obviously the whole NAR, National Association of Realtors settlement, people who don't know, they settled this year. So the whole thing was to get rid of the compensation of, well, the compensation is still there, but the seller who hires the listing agent to sell his or her home, they can no longer advertise the commission split on the multiple listing service, or MLS. So
And how's
essentially,
that working out, by the way? Not
well,
good.
not good
Not good.
because the
There's a lot of
the
confusion. You're calling the broker. You're going, my client wants to see it. What is the commission the seller is willing to pay me, right? And now you got to say to your seller, look, we're not going to get the traffic you might want to get because
there
I'll
you go.
just tell you, it's very easy, right? To say to your buyer goes, oh, I really want to see this apartment. You say, hey, I know that building. The board is a little tough. They don't have a lot of money in the reserves. Resale value hasn't been great. You could talk them out of seeing it if you know that there's a commission that's not being paid on it.
There
I'm
you
sure you
go.
could, right?
There you go.
Once again, I know fiduciary responsibility, but it's like, and then all of a sudden, your seller's going, how come we don't have any traffic? Well, brokers aren't bringing their buyers. We got to rely on direct clients, right? So once again, I've only heard negative things so far.
Well, because the whole idea is that they don't understand the value that brokers slash agents bring to a buyer or seller or landlord or renter. So so give me an example. So if let's say you're a renter in New York City and you're like, okay, I'm going to go find an apartment. Let's say a renter is just out here by themselves. So what's the
They're
difference
on
between
Zillow or on Street Easy,
their own
let's say,
Zillow,
right?
Street Easy? Obviously, they can find something, but what's the difference? Because most of the people I know who rent in New York City use a broker, use an agent, as far as I know. So what's somebody going to go through if they're just out here running around Manhattan or wherever and they're just trying to find something? What's the difference for them?
Well, look, at the end of the day, I understand the frustration. I understand it's a lot of money up front. But right now, the two options are more money up front or more money later on, right? So
Right.
if you ask me, hey, would you rather pay more money up front, right? Let's say the department's 3,000, a 1 month fee, security, right? Broker's fee. So let's say 9 grand versus, okay, 3,400, no fee, but then next year it's 35. I'd be like, no, I'd rather take the smaller increase, right?
Right.
Because but with people who use brokers in the city, it's all right. So the argument I keep hearing from this side is, well, other cities don't do this, and it's like, well, are we going to compare the island of Manhattan and even most parts of Brooklyn to
Yeah.
what they do in Wyoming? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In certain states, you don't need a lawyer to close on a house on a sale,
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
right? In Manhattan, you don't need just a lawyer to close. You need like a rabbi, a priest, and a mom, right? You got to have someone from the Church of Scientology there. It's like you have a mansion. It's crazy. Like all
It's
there's too
crazy.
many people involved, right?
Yeah.
Mortgage broker, title person, right? Dental
Right.
hygienist gets involved at some point, you know. But
Right.
seriously, it's a lot of people. So it's a more complicated process here. We have co-ops here. You got to get through the co-op board. And people are always like, well, justify why I should pay you. Okay, all right, listen, right? Two things. One, to get to the level I'm at, right? There were many years where I didn't get paid, sure. But I'll give you two great examples. During COVID, everything was like minimal fees and whatever. The demand was low. I showed
Right.
one apartment 85 times over
Holy
the
shit.
course of 5 months. Okay,
Oh,
got paid 2 grand. Okay, the company takes 30%. Okay, I got to pay.
right.
Fine, whatever. Who cares? If you factored it in, fine.
Yeah.
2 years later, the market turns. I get paid $4,000 on that apartment, a 1 month's fee, and I only had to show it 3 times. But if you factor
Yeah.
that in, combined both those times, I probably still didn't make that much money, right?
Right.
So people are like, you just opened the door. Yeah, well, I didn't just open the door for you, right? I paid a photographer. Street Easy charges $7 a day. I had an appointment yesterday at 7:30. At 7:29, they canceled. Okay.
Hmm.
Then I had
Yeah.
an appointment at 9:15, and I'm standing in the apartment at 9:20, and they text me, sorry, found something else, right? And then eventually you find someone, and they say, well, why do I have to pay you 1 month's fee? It's like, well, I showed it to 22 people. You're
Of
taking it,
course.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And there is demand, right? It is a demand
Right.
issue, right? So, or like I said, hey, I don't want to pay a fee. You think I give people a hard time? Look, if you don't want to pay a fee, there are people who are willing to pay a fee for this apartment. If it sits for
Right.
more than 2 months, the landlord will say, okay, I'll pay you the fee. But I don't think it'll sit for more than 2 months. But maybe if you go up 5 blocks or, well, I don't want to live there. Well, that's a no fee apartment.
Right.
Supply and demand. It's that simple. I
It's that
guarantee you, if you
simple.
pulled up a map, right, of where the fees are and where the fees aren't, I guarantee you most of the fees are in West Village, Greenwich Village, Soho, Tribeca, where people, right, the demand is the highest and the supply
Very
is the
high.
lowest, right?
Yeah.
If you pull it up in Hudson Yards, right, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th Avenue between, 28th and 60th, I guarantee you there's a high concentration of no-fee apartments because the demand
Yeah.
isn't as high.